This is all the artifacts and relics we missed during playing the main game. Going to Peru. Right at the beginning as well.
But this time with a cat suit.
This one I can sort of see why we missed, because it's a bit counterintuitive that you go forward and then you kind of backtrack on yourself.
Yeah. Although, in retrospect, if we just looked around a bit more when we got here, we would have noticed that sort of the ledge goes all the way around you and we would have went, ooh, is there some sort of silver tooth here?
I think that's the only one we were missing there.
It also puts you, like, where you actually need to be when you finish, so that's nice as well.
Oh, this one is like very much like, yes, you could have spotted it if you were looking around a lot, but it feels very, you'd really, really have to be looking around, because this is sort of the weird hidden one.
Yeah, I have to admit, when it said, oh, it's here, I'm like, really? But yes, really? I believe she's sporting her leg end outfit here.
Yeah, we'll let her get to where she's up to.
I got really impatient here, which is why I was jumping like that. It's like, ah.
You sort of put yourself on the corner and you can see underneath on the stonework when the camera turns where you need to drop to, which is there. And then you line yourself up for the jump.
Textbook.
But this one feels like, I don't think people would notice that right away. There we go.
Oh, there's a flipping medikit on the other side!
There is,
which you can get as well. Yeah, look at it. Hidden. Ancient.
And we're going to Greece. Oh, I know what this one is. So you go into the Hephaestus section, which is the one with the electric flow and the hammer and all that cool stuff. I think that's one of the cool ones. They're all cool. This is just put together to make sure you know exactly which sort of place you have to get to, which is that. And we're going around the other side to get there.
Oh, that background music for the no.
Yeah, the bit that reminds me of Space Odyssey, with people sort of yelling.
And the obelisk.
Yeah.
Ooh, that looks way more dangerous than it is.
Yeah, I think at this point we were sort of like, we just want to get on with it and get the things.
I forget which outfit that is. It's cool though. Oh, you can hear the electricity spark.
Ah!
Totally forgot about that.
Some of the doors, they're butts.
But none of the butts are doors. It's an important distinction.
I can hear the electricity now, actually. You can hear it quite early on. And I thought I'd keep this bit because we kind of managed to do, not in the LP, the perfect run of this little puzzle where you never get hit. I think Peter is the one who managed to do this.
Yeah, bearing in mind, I wasn't trying to.
No, you just, because you know exactly how to do it, so you kind of just went for it. And now we'll actually get the artifact room.
Whoops.
Ah. Yeah, I was worried it wouldn't release because obviously you're on it, but it can't kill you because obviously we've got the no death cheat on.
You can tell.
It's easier.
Ooh, this one. Ooh.
Yes.
Ooh.
This is the labyrinth one, as I like to call it, where it's like there's a doorway right there somehow. It's like we run right past this in the LP because you don't notice there's a doorway.
In fact, I'm just disbelieving, go out again, come back in. Yeah, it's up in there.
Okay. There we go. We've got another one in Greece. Right, this is the one we thought we had gotten or something the first time.
No,
through.
it was
timed.
We kept on. It's like I triggered the actual thing to get it, but what I didn't realise is that it was timed, and that you have to activate the switch to get it, and then run up to it, and then grab the thing, and then continue. So I thought it would just be you trigger it once and then it's always available. So then when I got to the end of the level, I'm like, well, where's my artifact?
Yeah. So yes, it's that first off, you need to pull this switch underwater, go up, pull another switch, go across, pull another switch, then make your way all the way back, and then make your way all the way forward.
Yeah. So here we go, we've pulled the switcheroonie.
The first one. You can just ignore the crocodiles if you're wondering what that noise is.
Yes, the giant hissing crocodile. It's a crocodile that's only known to inhabit video games. Why does it hiss?
Maybe they do hiss.
This is a lot easier when you can just run through the fire shouting lol.
Admittedly, yes, it's nice that it doesn't punish you in terms of collecting the extras if you do want to collect them with the cheats activated. It doesn't care.
Let's switch to this one. Lining myself up there and actually not failing.
Yeah,
did a couple of times.
Yeah, there was a cut there because we did fail it, because it's like it wants you to do a very specific sort of set of jump, slide, switch, jump, go down, switch, jump on another thing.
And the couple of the times I did it, I went, hang on a minute, I did the exact same sequence of inputs, at least it felt like I did, and I got a different result, so it's like, don't like that. Including failing on that little bit and like overshooting, and it's like, but it's the same jump. What?
Yes, it's this switch that unveils the extra when she hits it, but then you still have to make your way all the way back to the beginning and actually do the run.
Quickly as well.
Exactly. So there it is.
So we've done this,
Yeah,
we just never actually got to do it. And it's a right pain as well.
But you have to really like rush over there.
Like a speedy Lara.
Which is why you have to bother to pull all of the other switches first, because obviously if you need to open the way across, like that's a waste of your time. I think this is like the sports gymnastics outfit.
Oh, I thought this was the forgot to wear clothes look.
And you jump across, and you get onto yet another pillar. And you have to go all the way around and up and get onto the next pillar. It is actually quite awkward.
Although made less awkward by the fact that I'm immune to the fire.
Yeah, it helps when you make yourself fireproof. It was even going down.
You found the griffin head protome. Griffin heads were fitted on bronze cauldrons or drinking vessels in archaic Greek art circa 700 BCE and served as talismans to ward off evil spirits.
Yeah, like we just made it in time. Now we're into Egypt.
Oh, with our
Classic outfit.
is that what it's called?
Yeah.
That went well. Yes, with how she looked in the original.
Which is quite cool. It is not quite how she looks in the original, because obviously it's a much higher res.
Well, it's the model's the same, which I think is what they're getting at.
This one is to show that it's another one of those ones where it's like the labyrinth door one, where it's like, well, you miss it because it's like tucked around a corner through a little alcove that you wouldn't really notice.
What's that thing we've talked about before in other LPs where it's like, how often can you hide things by just putting them out of the line of sight?
Yeah. So you do have to do this bit. Oh, all of this bit into the main game, because you're going all the way around. But instead of continuing to our left, you go in here.
And it's like, what?
The cheeky things.
It's basically just in there with a skeleton.
And our next Egypt one. Oh, is this the one that I think it is?
This was painful.
So this is the big, long, sort of tall room where you have to do it the perfect run and hit the thing at the top just to get the artifact.
But I mean, you know, it's fairly straightforward. You can basically just do it your first time.
So you have to start pulling this switch off in the first place.
Yeah, this is on a very long timer. So actually, even if you do a basically perfect run, if you like, you know, do a back and a forth on a swing too often, you'll get to the very top and it'll shuck in right at the last minute.
At the end, yeah.
This did take us a fair few attempts.
But I should have just the one run through. It's quite awkward because a lot of them are just like, you know, you've just missed it. It's not because like you needed any particular skill, but this one is actually like, no, you really need to be able to huff it to do the perfect run.
There's a very particular set of skills. No, I'm not going to do the rest. People can do it themselves in their heads.
I think we're wearing the wetsuit this time. Because we thought it would be nice to see a selection of outfits.
Yeah. Yeah, drop down. Yeah. And then that bit where I do actually stop and leg myself up. Because if you don't, you just fall through it.
Yeah.
Through it even sometimes. Same as this one. I think this is the few time where I do sort of go back, because every time I did it the first time, and I've seen the videos of people doing it, but every time I did it the first time, I just went, death. So I thought, no, I need to stop doing that.
I think we figured you'd save more time actually making sure you did it once than dropping and having to go up again.
Precisely. Well, you would just have to start your attempt again. But yes, if you get all the way up, that one on the right there is fully exposed.
We just got it.
I think I did quite well, actually.
Yeah.
Just got it. Loads of time. Actually, I think it stops going back in after a while anyway.
It does the sound effect, I think, to sort of go, this would have been the time. But I didn't pull it back in. So this is the second one in Egypt at this level that we missed.
It was a nightmare, Egypt was.
Oh, I know what this one is. And this is when we had the platforms right at the top where we weren't sure if you could get to them. And you do just have to do like a particularly fiddly wall jump.
Not that one though. There's nothing up there. But you can go a hoocher.
This is just getting us in the right place, because I was hoping it would give people enough of a context that they knew where we were.
And then we're finally up here.
This is the room where it's like, if you pull the button right at the beginning, you might as well not bother, because you activate all the
death traps.
The death traps. But yes, so we stop here. You pull yourself up to like the level of the skirt length. And then you can start to do the swinging.
With my eyes closed.
And then you do a back jump.
It's a Shania Twain song.
And again, there would be like a knife coming out of there if you'd activated the knives.
So don't do that. And then there's sort of this, well, you can see it. There's a wall grabby. And then, but it's one of those ones that goes down. So you have to be super quick.
And there we go.
And it's like if you fail at any of those little steps along the way, that's it, you're dead. Yep.
All the way now to the Lost Isles. So I think what we didn't realise the first time through is that you go forward and you do have to reclaim your guns, but once you've done that, you then come all the way back to the beginning, and then you can get all of the stuff that's in here.
Because you can shoot that.
Yeah. So first off, you get to go on the little boat.
And then it's basically the end of the Dr. Phibes movie, where he sings Somewhere Over the Rainbow whilst disappearing behind the thing and going down the Lake of the Dead.
I see.
I need to watch Dr. Phibes again now.
We could do.
We've got it, don't worry. Right, so anyway, you jump onto here, just like in Dr. Phibes, and then up to here.
The trick is just to actually be able to come back with the guns, and then yeah, you're following a pretty obvious path around.
Because we spotted this,
yeah,
we just didn't do anything with it, because it's like you move on and then you sort of forget anyway. And down.
So randomly placed Natla containers. There we go. Not sure what they would be doing all the way over here.
Yeah, I wouldn't have put storage containers there. I would generally put them where you can get to them.
And the boat still keeps going down there, like it's just gone now.
Somewhere over the rainbow.
But that's not all that's hidden here.
No.
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 There's also
Because you can shoot all the ropes, right?
a thing.
And it's like an artifact as well, right?
Mm-hmm. So this is the Chalice of Torment. This chalice was used to collect the spilt blood of sacrificial virgins. Once the blood was collected, the chalice was used as a mixing vessel where other herbs and powders were added to turn the liquid into a psychotropic fluid used by Atlantean priestess judges to invoke spirit journeys.
Although really, I think it was just a crossover with Legacy of Kain.
And then I think I'll leave it in, but you, one of the things you can do is you can still shoot down that other container.
I don't think there's anything in it, does
But it doesn't contain anything, no. But I think I left it in, because it's like, you might as well. I think we have to get up a height first.
Which is silly.
Same as once you've knocked the boxes down, you can still get to them.
Yeah.
Don't think we can shoot it while on it. I think we have to jump onto it.
The medikit we don't really need.
There we go, we shoot that one off.
But we can't do it from the ground.
You have to be level with it. Then you can just see it's underwater. But there's nothing in it. There's no extras in it.
I suppose there might be something in it, but we can't get to it anyway. And then this was another very easy section of the game.
I suppose in a way it's like the item wasn't particularly hidden. It's just we didn't go to that last little bit. It's that bit over
you can
the
sort of see
exit.
it there.
It's slightly fiddly.
That went weird.
I don't think we quite sort of pathed to it the right way.
But you can't just do this. Which I was surprised at, because that doesn't really look like you should be able to make it, and you almost don't.
Yeah, I think you're supposed to use these jumpy things.
Either that or the way I'm using it, or the way I'm using it to get out again.
Yeah, because that looks like it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
This is one of those like tricksy, like you just have to look in the right direction ones. Because in this section you're concentrating on finding all the buttons and shooting all of the buttons to open all the doors.
Oh, go away.
And you know, you run right through here because there's the block and you want the block. You need it to get to things.
But
I was showing that we were distracted.
okay.
But you go in here and actually it's like it's right there.
Nah. Yeah.
The butts. There we go. And the creepy
That skin
doppelganger.
is so creepy.
I know. And your feet squelch.
Ew.
So unlike, because like the metal one, you get like stompy metal feet, and in this one, they make squelchy noises.
So this was another easy section where we never died.
And this is the one where we
took me
kept
so long.
seeing it behind the lava sort of
But
flow,
then you're like,
but we couldn't figure out how to get to it.
How do you get to the darn thing?
And yes, this is in and of itself was awkward to figure out, like, because it's like everything is hurting you and you have to jump off things at just the right angle. So there it is behind there. But the trick, again, is yes, you go over here and you have to go round. It's right there. There we go. And I think that's the last one.
More textureless mode?
Yeah, so this is just showing it off in a couple of different instances because I think it looks quite cool.
So yes, this is just in the opening of the game. Everything's sort of grey on grey.
I think it looks cool. Same as it's like the effects are like a separate engine because it's like you still get snow and light beams and foam and everything.
Yeah.
I just think it looks kind of cool, so I thought I'd show it off a bit.
But everything that's an actual object is devoid of texture and sort of colour to an extent as well. But yes, the lighting's still there, so you can see some things are lit up sort of orangey.
Yeah.
So on and so forth. It's very strange on such a... You can actually see behind the waterfall a bit better.
And you even get to see it on the menu, which I don't know if everyone would realise. It's like, it's nice to see.
I didn't.
And then you can turn it back off as well and see the menu go back to normal. And these are all just sort of little extra bits I thought that would be nice to show. So right at the beginning, after your shepherd's been murdered by wolves, you come in and you activate this arrow trap, and then it's like, because you can't avoid it, it's a giant button. But apparently you can reset it, which I have never realised. Peter pointed it out.
Up there.
I think there's 2 bits you sort of turn off.
Yeah, I think you turn off the left side and the right side.
There we go, now it's quiet.
Which makes it a lot easier. I mean, you only took a tiny bit of damage anyway, but it's nice. Are we drawing more attention to this one as well? Yeah. Oh, no, it's that one.
So there's the other one alongside the portrait is on the wetsuit. There's specifically the Soul Reaver logo as opposed to showing Kane.
No, that's the clan symbol of Raziel.
Oh yeah, I thought this was fun just because we turned her into gold so many times.
You have to, don't you?
And yes, I think that's that's the sport outfit, yeah. Which I think is what you're supposed to run around in like your gym. This was just me doing it by accident, I think.
Oh yeah, because you accidentally walked onto it.
Press jump. But you turn the sort of the weird doppelganger into gold.
No.
Which doesn't quite work as well, because like her bony bits are still kind of bony coloured.
Mm.
And then you can turn...
Oh, this is the best one, just because it's so unimpressive.
Gold Lara to gold, because it's like if she turned back maybe that would have been cool. But no, it's just...
It's the same!
It's the same.
She looks the same!
I think this was just to show off a close-up of how detailed the models are, because they're kind of gross. You can see her teeth.
Ain't that the tooth? Ooh.
This bit I was a bit unsure if I should leave in, because it feels very like a tiny little stupid extra. But yes, you can block the other side with a rock and open this side, so it's like it's open, right?
So you can't actually go through because there's an invisible wall and then you die. And now some commentary from Not Us.
Welcome to the game commentary for Tomb Raider Anniversary. I'm Jason Botta, the creative director for Tomb Raider Anniversary.
And I'm Toby Gard, the original designer from the first TR1.
Ah, you were the creative director. Give yourself some credit.
I suppose there's only 6 of us, though. I mean, you don't have such grand titles back in those days, but yeah. So in terms of the opening sequences of the original game, the whole thing was leading up to sort of the whole wolf extravaganza that happens, where it was kind of the big reveal of Lara Croft. And obviously some of that wasn't really appropriate anymore. People know who Lara was, so it enabled us to actually be able to show Lara in the intro, in the foyer in Calcutta, and obviously we didn't have to go quite so crazy with the wolf bit with the big tails flying off of her and stuff.
And I think the essence of that whole cinematic and whatnot is the same, sort of an introduction to the main characters of the game, and sort of sets up what the entire game is about. So that sort of remains unchanged.
Yep.
Yeah, we sort of tried to follow a lot of the shots from the original game, sort of inspiration for us throughout the entire game, but for this opening scene as well.
So I remember when we were first putting together the design for Tomb Raider, and I found that it was pretty disturbing how many games, how much there was of killing in games. Basically, so many people killing each other mindlessly. You know, you walk up to some chap and just because they're from a different country, you can gun them down, and that seems to be perfectly reasonable. So in TR1 I felt like, apart from the fact that I didn't think we could do very good humans at the time, like other human enemies, it seemed to me like a much nicer thing to do to have the enemies be animals, sort of, you know, vicious animals like bats and rats and things.
Which is ironic because I think now most people would consider killing animals way crueler than killing people.
It is, yeah. I mean, pretty much, yeah, the worst thing about it is, of course, they're all endangered species. None of this occurred to me at the time. To be honest with you, I just thought, great, we're not killing humans hardly at all. What a great selling point.
When we redid it, we went and we looked at the animals in TR1, and they weren't very mean looking, which made killing them even worse.
I remember my teddy bear model was, it was very cute.
That's right, so we consciously tried to sort of go back and make the animals much more vicious this time around, so you didn't feel so bad about killing them. You could maybe only lose about an hour of sleep instead of all night.
So this was one of the rooms, the Wolf Bridge room, essentially. So early on in the game, in the original Tomb Raider, where it's really just, hey look, there's going to be some big baddies that you're going to fight at some point. You're able to sort of stand above them and shoot them to death.
Lara's so mean.
Yeah, well, or you could just leave them alone, I suppose. There was nothing really going on in that room in the original TR1, and I was sort of pushing for us to simply, you know, just skip this room on the remake because it wasn't particularly significant. But
yeah, I think visually it was one of the more sort of recognizable areas from TR1 though, so we wanted to keep it but sort of change it a little bit. So I think it was you that had the idea, right, of breaking the first bridge so that you fall down into the wolf area.
Yeah, so really basically make life difficult for the animal lovers.
You have to kill the wolves now, or they kill you.
The people who didn't snipe the wolves basically get the worst deal.
That's right. Plus, it makes the second bridge a little bit more intense now.
That's the big one, yeah.
Yeah.
So this room in the original, it was the goal to try and create a sense of reality to sort of the progression. Right? We had to separate Peru into 4 levels, but when we were designing them, we made them so that they were supposed to fit together. We tried to keep the big door at one end, and then you'd be popping out on the other side into the new level. So they were very continuous, essentially 4 continuous massive levels, but they were split into chunks. One of the improvements is that actually happens now seamlessly, so you carry on through it. And it's a little easier that way to be able to tell what some of the areas were supposed to be. And this particular area was supposed to be essentially a fortified entrance to their city, whereby you've got arrow areas, these sloped walls, and then holes for people to be able to, I don't know what they do, chuck rocks at people, or throw stones, or call them names and stuff, leading to the actual main entrance.
Right, it was sort of the last fortitude of the Vilcabambans against the invading Spaniards.
Spanish.
That's right. And originally you came in sort of up top in one of the side areas and sort of worked your way around. But we felt that we really wanted to make the players play the route of the Spanish invaders, since that's essentially what Lara is. She's sort of coming in and going into the home of the natives here. So we wanted to make her run the gauntlet down the center.
So when we were first setting up what kind of levels, what kind of areas we wanted to go for, Incan areas, obviously, one of the big civilizations that people are very aware of and so forth. At the time, the actual Vilcabamba itself hadn't been discovered when we made TR1. It literally was a lost city of legend where the Incans disappeared to, and the Spanish supposedly didn't get to it. I mean, actually, I think that the current theory is the Spaniards did find it, killed everybody in there. But anyway, so by the time we come to a remake, they've actually found Vilcabamba. It doesn't look anything like this for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah.
Yeah, when we came to sort of remake this village area, one of the things that was interesting was when Toby was like, we're going to remake the village, and everybody was like, there's a village? Where? And I think it was sort of one of the things in TR1, just because of the way they built it, sort of the fact that there was this village where everyone lived was sort of unclear. So we really wanted to sort of reinterpret the idea of there being a village to sort of clarify that to the user that, oh, look, it's actually a town and a civilization, and there are these little huts. So we sort of kept the individual areas that were in there the same, but we completely relaid it all out and made a big wide open space in the middle where you could sort of see everything all at once and get the real sense that there was a civilization that lived in this area. So this was sort of the exit from the town proper into the more depths of the cave that this Incan civilization had built.
It was one of those spots in the original TR1 where I'm a big fan of sort of symmetric level design, because people generally, when they're building architecture, tend to be fairly symmetric about their efforts. It gives you interesting ability to sort of reuse the idea of a space but change it based on the amount of ruin that's going on inside it. So I like that repeat, and the 2-towered gateway into the Lost Valley was one of those spots.
Yeah, and we kept that essentially the same. The only thing I think we changed is we actually have physics in the game now, which they didn't have in TR1, so we made the opening of the door done by Lara's physical interaction with the lock pieces themselves.
So waterfall area, basically entranceway essentially to the Lost Valley, was definitely one of the more memorable bits, I think, that people... It's one of many places in TR1 where the obsession with putting things behind waterfalls was played around with. I like this idea of looking behind waterfalls. Oh, wow, that's pretty bizarre, isn't it? So we actually hid the main temple, where you're actually trying to get to is physically behind the waterfall. So the progression takes you beyond the point where you actually end up, if you see what I mean. into an area with more waterfalls.
That's right. With secrets behind them too, actually.
That's the way. That's exactly the way, right? Yes.
Yeah, it was really interesting when we went back and remade this area. We built it really close to the original scale of the room in Tomb Raider 1 the first time, and everybody that played it thought that the waterfall was too small. And it sort of gets at the point that when we're remaking something that people sort of are remembering playing, that their memory of it's different than the actual game. And so we ended up making the waterfall a lot bigger than it was originally, to live up to people's expectations of what it should be. Strangely enough, this is actually one of the areas that I remember the most from Tomb Raider 1, was jumping back and forth across this river.
Well, it was wanting to ramp sort of the... because we didn't have nice save systems. Pretty much, if you died, you're going to be playing at least almost half a level, right, to get back to where you were. So jumping across the waterfall was just a way to sort of be kinder with the reset. So if you fell down the hole, basically it just dropped you into the waterfall. It's kind of like a little white water rafting ride, and sort of spectacular, and that was it. Which I suppose is different now because it's actually kind of crueler now to do that, because with save points being so liberally scattered around, like having to actually ride all the way down the waterfall back into the original area is more of a punishment than just dropping people onto spikes.
That's right, because we made the traversal up the waterfall so much more intricate now. That is a little bit crueler. Yeah, it adds to the tension.
It does.
And at the end of the cog puzzle, which we obviously changed, but still left a little homage to the end of the passage up above the waterfall ends with a wall with cogs on it, which was the site of the original puzzle.
Yeah.
But we've henceforth moved it into the waterfall area itself. The Lost Valley is probably the most memorable part of Tomb Raider 1. And it's really funny because listening to people talk about it, a lot of people remember it being in a cave. And that was because you had really bad draw distance and it just sort of went out to black fog.
Well, pretty much we only had one fog color, which was black. So we couldn't actually, even though we wanted to have sort of an open top, we couldn't really do it. I think actually it's black at the top. So it's as if it was nighttime or something, I suppose. But it was supposed to be an outside area.
And now it really is.
Yeah, but it looks quite a lot better. So yeah, T-Rex in the original, that was probably the most memorable bit for a lot of people, I think.
Absolutely.
It was one of the early 3D games, and having that guy hove out the darkness at you, out the draw distance, was really frightening. And it was a lot of fun animating, because it was pretty much an instant death situation if you were underneath his mouth. He just bit down and shook you about like a little terrier or something, shaking out. Little toy. Little legs would fly everywhere, and then he'd spit you on the ground, and it was all part of the fun. That kind of was the basis for always making Lara's deaths as horribly cruel and painful looking as possible in the first game.
And now he's back, and he's a good deal bigger than he was. And that sort of goes back to what we talked about a little bit earlier, which was that people's memory of things is different than what it was. We made the T-Rex originally about half the size he is now, and ended up having to double him in size to sort of ramp up the feel and the intensity and make him scary and everything still. So now he's ginormous. He's a humongous T-Rex, way bigger than a real T-Rex would have actually been.
Right, but that's all right. And then obviously adding in the kind of concept that you use the environment against him instead of just shooting him, because that was always the problem with the TR1 bosses, was that we didn't have time to really do anything special for the fights against the bigger monsters. It's still just essentially just putting as much lead in them as physically possible, and adding in the environmental stuff to this seemed like the most sensible way to big up that combat. In the original, earlier on in the level, we had put in a switch over a trapdoor, and you pull the switch and the trapdoor literally drops you away into some water, so it's sort of like, oh, that's so cruel. But then you're in water and it's totally fine, so just sort of to freak you out and give you a bit of a scare. And so what we did this time with this particular room, once you get to the final temple, you pull the switch, because everybody always runs over and pulls switches, and it drops you straight into combat.
Into the wolf den, as it were.
Yeah.
This was one of the rooms that I liked very much and wanted to keep. We had talked for a while about possibly not including this area. We were sort of trying to decide what areas to pick from Tomb Raider 1, but it was one of my favorite areas because of the cruelty of it all.
Yeah.
So I wanted to keep it, and now it's in there. And you too can get owned by wolves. It's good.
One of the interesting things about the sequence of Lara going to Natla's office was how she went up the elevator shaft, because when we were looking at the sequence, it seemed like it was going to be pretty boring in the original game. Her just breaking into an office and going up, rifling through Natla's drawers. So we came up with this idea of her using the counterweight to fly up the lift shaft, and it's kind of interesting because I remember that basically that actually got sort of, plagiarized slightly. No, not plagiarized. What's the word? It was homaged in the Matrix movie, which was pretty cool, actually. And then in remaking the office section, we decided to use that space to actually build a little bit more information on Natla, because we don't really get to see a lot of Natla. So we came up with this idea of, instead of Lara originally just read some kind of diary, she gets to look through Natla's
Video logs,
exactly, and we get a little bit of backstory both on Larson and Pierre, and it was an interesting way to sort of get more character going on without Lara having to sort of interact with them or change the sequences too much. So originally, old Pierre, you just fight him here. He just runs out, starts gunning you down, basically. But we wanted to, first of all, make a character that was a little bit more interesting than just to shoot first and ask questions later. But we also wanted to sort of keep one of the aspects of Pierre that made him really interesting in the first game, or I really liked about him anyway, which is that pretty much you had to fight him about 3 or 4 times throughout the level, and you'd shoot him loads and loads of times, and then he'd just suddenly decide, that's it, I'm running away, and he just, as soon as he went out of line of sight, he'd just vaporize, basically.
Which was a little cheap.
So when we came to doing the remake, I was going, that's great! I love the way that he just goes behind a pillar and vanishes, and everyone's going, no, it's rubbish, it's ridiculous, where does he go? So we actually decided to play on that in the cutscene and have him sort of be sort of this ninja guy who could be anywhere behind any pillar, potentially, and basically work that into the cutscene.
St. Francis Folly is, I would say, probably the second most recognizable area from Tomb Raider 1, other than the T-Rex Valley. I think a lot of people really remember that sort of big vertical room and the climbing up the broken thing in the middle. So, I mean, we really wanted to sort of keep that feel when we redid it, and then just sort of make it more involved and sort of more challenging to the player this time. But essentially, it's pretty much unchanged. We even sort of went back and duplicated the textures from the original for like the floor panels in the middle, because they're sort of so recognizable.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting sort of goal with that area when we were, because it's quite common that game designers, even when they have a 3D vertical sort of space that they can play with, they tend to sort of end up just making long, flat things anyway. So that particular area from the original game was just sort of, let's go as vertical as we possibly can and see what we can do with it. And it was great with Lara being so sort of easy to kill. It's such a frightening space to move through. And, as usual with Anniversary, everything is double the size now, so it's even more frightening looking. In the original, the idea of the 2 sections of the room was, the first one was obviously just essentially sort of it was kind of really just basically a random death machine. So you had this checkered pattern on the floor, and you're supposed to sort of be able to, I think, tell where the next lightning bolt was supposed to come, and then try and avoid that area. But in reality, you just had to run across as fast as you possibly could in case you get fried.
This is quality design. Random death.
Random death machine. Do you realize how much time we had? Anyway, so after the random death machine, the concept of the next room actually was, I like the idea of having to put yourself like into the most dangerous position you possibly get, right?
Right.
Where
Under the hammer.
You have to physically stand under the hammer and then wait for it kind of like to crank back and then drop, and you have to just run off at the last second. And that was particularly evil in the first one because Lara moved so slowly. She took so long to react to anything. So you kind of, it really made for the situation where you'd sort of stand on the pressure plate and then you kind of run off and go, ooh, and it didn't trigger, and you go, oh, it's a little bit too much of a chicken that time, and you'd run back and go, woo, run off. Well, at least that's what I used to do anyway. All right, Neptune.
Neptune, yeah. So originally the Neptune room was essentially just a hole in the floor with a little pool of water, wasn't it?
How dare you? No, like the goal with the Neptune area was to actually give people a sense of real claustrophobia underwater. So it was an extremely long shaft, and you get the moment you stepped into it, it sucked you all the way down to the bottom. And that was, I wanted to get this feeling of like that terror of being, you know, deep underwater and knowing that you can hardly swim back. So because the draw distance on the original Tomb Raider, basically it faded to black after not very far. The cool thing about the Neptune room was that you get sucked down this hole so far that you can't, it's black above you. There's no, you can't even see the surface anymore. And it was that horror of being pulled down to your doom that I was trying to get with the Neptune room. And then basically you have to just find a switch and turn off the current and swim up just in the nick of time. But what did you guys do? Looks pretty crazy.
Yeah, so we took that original area where you get sucked down, and then we built an entire new room off the side of that. So instead of just pulling the switch and swimming back up, now you pull the switch and you go into an entirely new room themed around Neptune and water. Though, you know what I just realized? We renamed this room.
What did you rename it to?
It's Poseidon.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah, see, this goes back to originally Toby not knowing who the Greek and the Roman gods were.
Well, it's not as bad a mistake as Thor, though, is it?
It's true. So while the original room was Neptune, this is now the Poseidon room. So that it's the same god, just now it's appropriate to Greece.
Yeah.
So that works out fictionally better. But the room's still sort of all water-centric. And you just sort of swim around and do stuff and get the thing and then swim back up the hole.
You do.
Well, you still got to swim back up. There's no doom Toby doesn't like. This wasn't even a room in the first game. It was a hallway with a ball at the top.
We didn't even have time to actually build Atlas. The whole idea was that there'd be this statue with, you know, obviously the chap with the big rolling ball, which was one of the small number of actual generic tools we could use to make our puzzles, and have it sitting on his back and textured like the world. We just didn't have time to do any of that, so we just had the ball at the top of a ramp and left the rest of it to people's imaginations.
That's right. So now we've actually been able to build Atlas.
Woo!
Yeah, so that's good. And there he is, and he rolls the ball down, essentially. The theme is the same. We just sort of added the added difficulty of having a pit at the end. In the original, you just sort of hid behind a ledge and let the ball roll over you.
No, that was the same. It was basically, you had to drop down into the pit, let the ball roll over the top of you as you fly over the top.
So
it made it a bit more complicated.
It's a tad bit more complicated, but thematically identical. Except we actually have a statue.
Yes. The Damocles room was basically, I mean, obviously his story is about having a sword sitting over his head. So the plan with the room was basically that you walk in and you see this like forest of swords hanging from the ceiling, and you think that's bad news. And then you pick your way through the room and actually nothing happens to you. but, you know, there's a prize at the end of the room, and you just know what's going to happen when you take it. So it's kind of really building that expectation of when the swords come flying towards you, like magic missiles.
That's right. We just sort of took that concept and ramped it up, and now we've got swords in the walls and swords in the floor. It's sword-tastic.
It dilutes a little bit the whole sword from the ceiling, though, which is the legend.
True. The Colosseum this time is round.
Yeah, I see that. It's a really major improvement. Didn't have any angles apart from the right angles, obviously first time round, so it does look quite a lot more like a Colosseum. Yeah,
we tried.
Impressive. And it's particularly impressive when you think that, again, Colosseum isn't Greek, is it?
Yeah, no, it's not Greek, but we just sort of fudged it.
Yeah.
It's Toby's fault because he put it in the first game.
Yeah.
We had to put it in this one.
But it was Romany Greeky. I wasn't too bothered. But it's a cool idea, I thought, to be able to, because really, kind of the concept of Tomb Raider 1 was just this idea that when I go to these sort of places, you know, Colosseum or Stonehenge or any of these sort of ancient ruins, I personally have a terribly strange urge to climb all over them, see where I can get to. And I thought, hey, if I want to do that, then maybe other people do. So getting the Colosseum in there seemed like a cool idea, because it's sort of exploring around on the inside, and we tried to create the rooms, obviously, that have been recreated here again, which are things like the gladiator areas and the places, the animal pits, and just tried to let people sort of string together the story of how the area would have actually worked, you know, centuries before in their own heads.
That's right. This game, like most games, is fantasy fulfillment, right? So it's all about exploring the ruins that you couldn't really explore if you went to Rome and went to the Colosseum.
Yeah, there's too many people telling you, hey, get off that ancient bit of rock there, you crazy monkey man.
That's right. You're going to break it.
In the first one, it was all you had to do essentially was, I think you had to pick up a couple of keys down in there.
And then go around the top, right?
And then, yeah, there was like a specific route around the outside. And obviously, Pierre showed up again in the first one and did his disappearing behind pillars trick, which was really pretty cool. But yeah, it was a very simple area, basically just unlock a couple of keys and then go up to the king's viewing, or the emperor's viewing area, Caesar, I suppose, which was full of monkeys, and then, you know, get out of there into the next area.
They're still monkeys. They're gorillas. They throw stuff now.
So what did you do? Go on. Tell us all about how you went about expanding it.
Yeah, so the original, we sort of kept the idea the same. We just wanted to sort of, obviously Laura's more nimble now, so we had to sort of increase the sort of level of detail in her interactions with the environment. So we just sort of made the environments more complex. We've got her traversing over various ruins and bits of broken column and pieces of the ceiling that have fallen out. So essentially it's the same. It's just sort of updated to match sort of the abilities of Laura. The Midas Garden, I think we sort of, we did the thing you guys intended, which was to build the Midas statue.
Yeah, I mean, the garden itself was supposed to have, well, exactly, I mean, we had, we just didn't have the resources to build a gigantic statue in the garden. Right. So it's pretty much, you had to, there was a garden, and if you climbed out on the roof, you could find a little room that had a hand in it, basically. And
it had a hand and a foot?
Yeah, and that's about as much as we could really do.
And the best part is that the foot, and like up to the knee, I think it was, and then that was the ceiling of the room.
Yes. Well, it's, roof had collapsed or something, probably.
But here we've actually gone and built the whole Midas statue. But obviously we had to keep the hand turning things to gold. That was key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that still happens, which is cool. We originally were trying to think of a way to make the monkeys turn to gold, because that would have been really cool.
Yes, that would have been.
Yeah, but you know.
It's one of the few times when in TR1 when we actually, something I remember sort of debating a little bit, because all of the other areas, all the other rooms in the Greek level, and I think in fact sort of throughout the whole game, they all made some kind of real-world sense, you know. They're traps, right? They're sort of ancient mechanisms. And it was only Midas's hand, really, that sort of eluded some kind of magical effect, something that you couldn't explain through any kind of science. And that, I remember, was a really tough call to make, because the goal was not to break the rules of sort of reality. But Lara turning to gold was so much fun to animate that I don't know, I just broke my own rules. Oh, well, I mean, pretty much the original idea for the room was just, I mean, the spikes were just a generic trap for us. Basically, you could walk through them, but if you ran through them or if you fell on them, they're instant death. And they're kind of fun because you can't really tell they're there apart from the floor texture have little holes in it. So you had to actually keep your eyes open. I thought it was a really fun little trap. And this was just like with many of our rooms, we would essentially think about some of the basic tools we had at our disposal, and we would just try and see how we could theme a room to it. So this was pretty much originally just, let's make Lara do loads and loads of jumps where you fall straight onto spikes because it's so painful looking when she goes onto spikes.
This all gets back to Toby's love to see Lara die.
What? Look at the nose. Man, you put spikes on everything, haven't you?
Yeah. We took the idea of the spikes and we made it even more spiky. You know, we gotta step up the challenge. Spikes are fun. Watching Lara get spiked is fun, though we can't actually do that anymore. The ESRB doesn't allow us to impale Lara in a teen-rated game anymore. So, you didn't have ratings when you made TR1, did they?
Yeah, we must have done.
I don't know, you impaled her all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, it wasn't a good day if Lara wasn't getting impaled.
Yeah, so, well, we can't do that anymore. But you can still get spiked and die. So at least that little fantasy lives on. So this was one of the 3 sort of challenge areas off of the Midas area.
Right, because they got 3 metal bits you have to change into gold to get a door open.
The lead bars that must be turned to gold.
Lead to gold, very alchemical. And basically, but other than the basic tools of sort of traps like rolling balls and spikes and stuff, and breakable floors, the only thing that we really could do in the original TR1 engine was essentially swap rooms. We could build 2 rooms that were identically sized, and we could swap them so long as Lara wasn't in that room, basically. So we actually managed to get quite a bit from that, and the sand puzzle was basically this kind of concept of, you know, if you was to pull out the support of the floor, then the whole room would crumble and fall apart above, type of thing, and you'd get a completely different layout. So you could essentially move across the room 2 different ways.
Right. The whole real sort of nature of Lara pulling out a foundation of a column be damned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but and that was pretty hard for us as well, because I mean it's kind of difficult to sell the column. We just had to have like basically a block there you pulled out, and then the world sort of rumbled, and when you went upstairs it was all different. But of course, fabulous new technology.
That's right. Now you go down in the room and it rumbles and some sand falls through. And then you go back up and the room's changed.
That's good, yeah.
We've come a long way in over a decade.
It's actually one of the things I wanted to do was be able to show the actual changes that, you know, basically just sort of fake an animation of the change in environment. And we actually did that a little bit in the original TR1 on the last level, where we actually sort of cut away and showed an animated object, and then we did the room swap, and that makes it a lot stronger. But this particular one, even you guys couldn't chew off, could you? Whole room collapsing and turning into...
Yeah, that was we tried to pitch that, and the producers came back and said, no, we don't have, you don't get to build 2 versions of this room. So we did one and we did what we could. It still sells it, I think. At least as well as the original Tomb Raider did. All right, so this is originally was sort of a series of columns with fire in the middle that you had to sort of time jumping across to get to the piece at the end, and there was water on the sides. So our first little pillar here is the homage to the original Tomb Raider pillars, and then the rest of the room we completely changed. So now there's still lots of fire, but we've, added more timing elements to it, make it harder.
Well, originally, the whole point of the room actually was that there was actually, it was all about the fact that Lara worked like clockwork. So if you kind of start a jump at a certain point, once she lands, there's a specific point when she can jump again. And it's not like any time, even if you press the button earlier, it's still going to be that specific time. So you can actually do it sort of like 3 or 4 jumps in a row, and you will always jump basically at exactly the same point. So we'd been training people to sort of jump from the very edge, but what we did was we stuck this sort of start line a bit earlier, so that if you actually literally jumped or started running from there and then jumped, then you could make the entire series of jumps in one go, right? And that was the only real way to essentially get through it without being burned. And in the original Tomb Raider, what happened if you walked into fire was that a tiny little bright flame would come out of the back of her shorts, which was telling you that she was on fire. And then you could jump into the water. So actually, I think this ended up being possibly one of the biggest, sort of like hardest parts in the whole game. I think pretty much everyone who played it had a massive amount of difficulty trying to actually do it. And from what I understand, I think most people defaulted to literally just running through the fire and taking health packs until they could pick up the thing at the far end and jump in the water to save themselves, which, well, didn't end up exactly what I was hoping for.
Probably not as fun as you had originally intended.
No.
So we tried to make it more fun this time. Not so cruel.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the sort of the little nook before the main cistern with the rats. Everybody loves the rats. I know when we were making the game, once the rats got in, everybody was like, "That's my favorite animal in the game." They just look so cute when they run around and they bite you. Yeah, so we had to put rats back in. Everybody dug them. This was the big sort of cistern underneath the grease level, where all the sewage from everything ran down into.
Yeah, I mean the goal with this was to sort of just create massive water-based Uber puzzle, basically, and
which it still is.
It still is. It was pretty frightening. I mean, frightening level when you walk into it to actually try and work out where you can go, where you should go. And that was like one of the real challenges with trying to balance this room in the first game was, when you give the player as many options as it looks like they have, it's extremely difficult to tell where they should try and actually start going and exploring. Especially since most of the actual places you can see are physically locked off by either the water level or by some other kind of door mechanism.
Yeah, and we sort of kept that theme when we redid it. I mean, it's still sort of large sections of the room are visible, but gated by water levels or gates or whatnot. So look, it's an authentic recreation of the original.
Yeah, just as frightening looking.
It is just as frightening looking and overwhelming to the player.
So, and then, all of our goal basically with the side rooms in the original game was just to sort of actually just to make life much more hellish for the player. I think that seemed to be our goal anyway, whereby you had to change the water level of the entire area more than once. So you had to do things in a prescribed order that you had no idea what that order was until you found out the hard way.
You were so cruel back then.
Yeah, this was a pretty evil part of the level, I have to say. It was hardcore.
Yeah, when we remade this room, we decided we wanted to cut off all of the side rooms and just make them like these little nooks in the wall, so that you could you never had to leave the space of the main area, and you could sort of be there when the water levels changed and whatnot. So that part is missing.
That's good.
But I think it turns out a little bit better.
And then, of course, you and your having to do everything twice as extreme changed it from one centaur crashing out of a statue into two.
That's right. We had to ramp it up for the kids.
Yeah.
The kids nowadays, they like it hardcore. So, yeah, we not only made it 2 centaurs, but we made the centaurs twice as big too.
Of course.
So it's 4 times the difficulty of the original. But in our defense, we did make the centaurs less cheap than they were in Tomb Raider 1. I remember playing this, and it was like they just had machine gun fireballs coming out of their arms.
Bone chips they were.
That was a bone chip?
Yeah, the whole kind of concept with the is that the beasts, the evil beasts, they were all sort of firing off bits of themselves, little sacks of fiery doom and little bone chips at you.
That's a red fireball, dude. That's not a bone chip.
No, it's not a fireball, right? Like the original one, it looks like a sort of fleshy sack that comes flying towards you, and then when it bursts, it ignites.
Oh, is that how the igniting happened?
Well, in my head, that's how it worked.
All right, there you go. Now we know.
So in the original game, when you actually arrive at Teoken's tomb, basically Pierre's already there, beating you to it, and he just kind of opens fire on you, and you essentially gun him down. He's already grabbed the ski on, so you gun him down and you take his stuff. And we decided that was well, not so good for a couple of reasons. One was that we wanted to add more significance to sort of like her first kill, and then we also wanted to well, we didn't like the idea that Pierre sort of beat her to it. He's always kind of one step ahead in the original, so it was better that Lara actually, kind of sort of wins, but he gets the drop on her. And another thing we changed was we wanted to actually kind of sort of show a little bit of what Teoken's about, because in the original game it's just, she finally goes in and reads about him on the tomb wall, but we wanted sort of a little bit more information about what's going on with old Teoken.
So this is the beginning of the Egypt level. We were trying to sort of theme each of the chapters of Tomb Raider Anniversary around a sort of theme, and Egypt's theme sort of quickly turned into traps, became the sort of focus for the level. So this first area is trap-less as a sort of a soft lead into the level, but quickly we ramp up and have all sorts of nasties in this level to sort of thwart Lara at every sort of turn.
In the original, this was pretty much the whole Egypt area was supposed to be themed around this one room, and the goal was we're going to put Sphinx in. There's going to be a huge door at one side that's going to lead into the sanctuary of the Skion, where you're going to pick up the Skion, and that's going to be that. But I remember being slightly disappointed by the size of the Sphinx in the original one, and that shaped the later level to come.
That's right. When we were remaking it, we sort of went and looked at the original, and it was sort of, as Toby was saying, they tried to cram a bunch of stuff in there, like, the obelisk and the Sphinx and this giant door. So when we were remaking it, we wanted to sort of add some symmetry to the room and a little bit of balance to it, so it didn't seem such like an architectural hodgepodge. So we duplicated the Sphinx and put one on the other side and sort of aligned the room along a central axis, sort of anchored by that big pillar in the middle. So I think it sort of gives the room a little bit more believability while keeping sort of all the thematic and sort of important elements in there.
This room, literally in the original, I think was just sort of 4 blocks or something along each wall that you had to really, really imagine hard was supposed to be statues. Kneeling statues, because obviously based on the old Karnak pharaohs. And it's really good to see that, you know, actually you can now be able to do justice to the concept of having these sitting chaps around the room.
Yeah, and we really liked the idea of the statues moving very early on, so that sort of became the theme of how we wanted to recreate this room, was put the statues in, but then make them move about.
That's the theme of this whole Egypt level, isn't it? You guys went move crazy. It's good.
Right, so this area, sort of another one that we sort of did a good deal of repositioning of sort of the elements of the room to give the room sort of more symmetry, make it feel and have a sort of a common theme to it. The original sort of had the temple of Bastet, the Egyptian cat god, sort of off on the side from where you entered the room, and we really wanted to make that the focus this time. So we sort of shifted things around and put it right when you come into the room to sort of give you a more impressive reveal of the space. Other than that, we sort of have kept most of the theme of this area the same.
Yeah, it's pretty good because I think that Egypt, for the most part, was sort of the least sort of fictionally coherent of the levels, and the remake has actually really kept the spirit of the original while actually making it a lot more real.
Originally, this was pretty bland area. It was just sort of an empty room, and then you worked your way up, and then there was another room with a bunch of sand in it. This was one of those state-changing rooms where sort of the entire room changed after you pulled some switch. In this case, the sand all fell down onto the bottom room. And
actually, the cunning thing was both rooms changed, right?
Oh, that's right, actually, yeah, because the top one isn't sand anymore.
No.
That's right, so this was, then you would do that and hop out once the sand had fallen through. So we liked the idea, but we wanted to sort of spice it up a little bit. So we created this scarab puzzle here to sort of just provide a little bit more visual interest to the room and a little bit more challenge.
In the original game, the idea of this room was basically to you come into a room and there's these six blocks and you can pull them out and it's basically either a reward or a punishment. And actually, they were all punishments apart from one, which was the thing you were here to grab. And I kind of thought that was just it's you know, I don't know, it seemed like a fun sort of little thing to do. But at the end of the day, once someone's died a couple of times, or once someone reads anywhere, you know, which one is the right one to pull out, then there's no real puzzle to it. So obviously, you guys did something different this time.
Yeah, we sort of wanted to, we kept the blocks and the sort of little side rooms off of it as a key to exiting the room, but we sort of added a combination lock type thing to the door, which sort of was our effort to both update the room and also to give fictionally sort of more meaning to actually getting through the room and getting into the next area, which is the big obelisk area. Sort of by making it more difficult to get into that area, it sort of gives more significance to the next part. When we were sort of trying to come up with a theme for Egypt, we decided early on that we wanted to make Egypt sort of themed around lots of difficult traps. So while we wanted to keep sort of the gameplay in a lot of the rooms very similar to how it was in Tomb Raider 1, we felt that we could spice up long, boring hallways with a good amount of traps, which both made them more interesting and also gave us an opportunity to challenge the player in between sort of the main rooms that they remembered from TR1. So I would say that we've done a fairly good job at making just regular traversal down your average hallway pretty difficult. In Tomb Raider 1, Lara, sort of one of the only difficult things that she could do was make these really large jumps. And so this area was an area where Lara had to sort of leap precariously back and forth between platforms, sort of sticking out along the walls of this room. Now that our current Lara in Tomb Raider Anniversary is way sort of more nimble and attaches to ledges and hangs on a whole lot easier, we had to sort of figure out a way to make a room themed around sort of this large ascent and precarious jumping over a large drop, but still sort of keep it challenging for the player. So we sort of made a fairly more complicated room. We sort of themed around these broken sort of floors of a large chamber that had broken away, and just sort of pillars were remaining that Laura had to traverse up.
The obelisk was it's kind of part of what became a sort of theme for the Egypt levels, which was we have a very small obelisk out at the front and a very large obelisk, this super gigantor obelisk here, and the idea of moving the pieces from the giant obelisk and just whacking them into the little obelisk in order to actually open the Skion room.
All right, Toby, why don't you tell us why there are two sphinxes? One in the beginning and a big one here.
So originally, when we first spec'd out the Egypt area, it was actually once you put the pieces into the obelisk, the doors open and it literally just revealed a room that had the Skion in it. But I was really disappointed with the way that the Sphinx had looked. So actually, on one weekend, I came in and built like the largest Sphinx I could possibly build, right? And it was so cool looking. Basically, we just added this. We added it in and turned it into the actual final part of the Egypt area. And part of what I think what I liked about it was the way that you approached it, because it would be very, I guess the obvious thing would be that you approach it from an angle whereby you can sort of see it from the front or see it from below and get a really good sense of the scale of it. But I wanted to actually come up onto it so that you didn't understand what you were standing on, so that you kind of, it took your mind a while as you walked around it to appreciate that you're actually standing on the back of the Sphinx. So you got that moment would happen when essentially it's hidden from you because of its scale.
And the fog.
It is. So after having modelled this gigantic Sphinx, I'm trying to turn it into a real level because it hadn't actually been sort of like laid out originally. It was just sort of built as it went along. I ended up just essentially taking a bunch of my test rooms that really pushed Lara's movement to the max, that were basically exploited more interesting combinations of moves and whacked them in as these side rooms around the outside. So it didn't really make an enormous amount of fictional sense, but they were some more interesting sort of movement puzzles.
Yeah, and when we went to recreate them, I mean, the original one, essentially, one side was just sort of pushing a block through a wall, and sort of you had to figure out which way to push the block, and then the other room was themed around sort of sliding down and jumping at the right time onto this bridge.
Yeah, it was sliding direction.
Yeah, which worked really well for Tomb Raider 1, but is very easy to do in Tomb Raider Anniversary. So we sort of completely changed the rooms and came up with a brand new puzzle involving the obelisks and the light, and sort of themed both the rooms similarly to sort of try to give the area sort of a theme.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Originally, what I was trying to do with this room was that after having built a gigantic Sphinx, I kind of come in another weekend and built even larger sitting down dudes, basically Horus and Osiris. And I thought it would be really cool because, you know, there's supposed to be actually a chamber, or like, there was rumours that there's a chamber between the actual front paws of the Sphinx in Egypt. And I thought that would be pretty cool to go, and that, you know, that's where you would expect your prize to be. But I wanted to do something a bit different, so I had this really tiny little hole that appears after you finally opened up down all the side rooms in the big Sphinx room, and then you just sort of go, I wonder what's going to be down there. But it was such a tiny hole, not a grand entrance at all, that you expected nothing much. And then you dropped down it, and you literally dropped into a room with 2 statues that are even more vast than where you came from. And that sort of reveal of actually, and because it was water filled when you dropped in there, you kind of only really saw them when you dived underwater, and you essentially were flying around these massive statues. I thought was a pretty cool way to introduce them.
So this is one of sort of the more interesting changes that we made to Egypt, was moving the sanctuary of the Skion to the bottom of the level. In the original, you sort of came down and got this one key, and then you were able to go all the way back up to the top, to the stairs, and then go into a little side room, and then the Skion was way up there. But we really wanted to sort of recreate this area as sort of a vault at the bottom of the entire sort of Egypt level. And part of that was us sort of making access into the very back where you actually can get the third piece of the Skion, gated by the other 2 pieces of the Skion, almost like they were a key to that you needed before you could gain access to it.
Which makes more sense from a story point of view, basically.
Absolutely.
So, mining time. So it was it's one of the places where we actually did manage to sort of show a bit of the fiction of the world, having Natla's technology, crates everywhere, and you know her minions have been mining away at the site trying to uncover the secrets of the past. And we built into that. We also used this in the first game as obviously, you know, having your weapons removed, adding to the sense of fear of the area, basically. But one of the weird things about it was that there was nothing really stopping you from missing the whole section out, running forwards. Basically, there was the cowboy guy who sort of got merged with Larson in the remake. He was basically standing in a room waiting for you. If you went in there without guns, he would pretty much shoot you to pieces. But it was still possible to actually basically run past him if you had enough health packs, and then carry on and not ever do any of it.
Right, so we wanted to address that in the remake, and also some of the we wanted to sort of refine the mines down to a sort of more manageable set of gameplay area. A lot of people, I think, found the mines to be fairly confusing to play through, so we really simplified it down to a couple of key areas that were sort of thematically the same as the original, and then still kept the fight with the now merged Larson / cowboy character at the end, but you can't run through it anymore.
So coming to rework or rewrite the story for Anniversary, basically the goal was not to rewrite it, but to invest it with some kind of emotional depth. And the point of the story became very quickly how far Lara will go for her obsession, how morally she's willing to stretch herself in order to actually just achieve her goals, because she's extremely single-minded. And the Larson character, therefore, expanded into the real test for her of, you know, are you going to shoot some guy just in order to get what you want? And I think that in games, most people don't actually think about what they're actually doing. They're kind of literally taking someone's life in order to achieve their goals. And I wanted, because we had so little in the way of human killing in Tomb Raider 1, the remake gave us an opportunity to really focus on what a difficult choice that really should be for a person. And so Larson is a very ambiguous character. He's sort of quite a nice guy, sort of. He's an enemy, but he helps Lara a little bit on the sly. Obviously likes her a bit. They have a bit of chemistry going, although obviously Lara has no interest really. And it was this point where we wanted to actually really connect the player with the experience of they want to move forward, Lara wants to move forward, and this guy essentially is standing in the way. We basically create the super action. Instead of it being really for gameplay, it's really for an emotional connection of the player with this act that is basically Lara stepping too far over the line, over the moral line, and taking down this guy and feeling bad about it.
Originally, the kid and fight with the shotgun guy, who I think didn't even have a name in Tomb Raider 1. Yeah, shotgun guy, who's now called Kincaid. So they were sort of separated, and when we were remaking the game, the notion of a guy on a skateboard in this underground skate park seemed sort of ridiculous.
It was pretty funny in the original, I thought.
So we removed the skateboard boss fight from the game, and instead combined that with the fight with the shotgun guy outside of the pyramid, which I think is sort of was a good decision.
Yeah, and this is the fight that we really went all out on in terms of the cinematic and how intense the whole thing was. Partially because the previous fight with Larson was basically just shooting it, and it was basically extremely simple in terms of the setup. It's much more of an emotional thing, so we wanted to turn Kid and Cole's fight into this massive, extravaganza, I suppose. When we were working out the baddies for the first game, we wanted to have some supernatural sort of creatures, but at the same time, I didn't want a muddied and confused sort of that magic is anything can sort of happen type of game, and so the concept of these Atlantean creatures came along, and we used those to be both the mummies and the centaurs and so forth, and we kind of sort of disguised them for the earlier levels in Egypt. They sort of, if you first see them, they're really well bandaged, and then later on, as the level progresses, their bandages fall off, and you see that there's nasty things going on underneath, and then finally you get to the last level, and you find out that these things are actually being sort of birthed inside the pyramid. So
the Atlanteans were smart enough to make crazy, rabid creatures, but not smart enough to make skin, huh?
Well, they're gonna die anyways.
One step closer.
Armies.
So the center of the pyramid was sort of this giant shaft that went up the middle. In the original game, Lara just sort of jumped from one sort of periphery room to the other off of this main area. And so we really wanted to get Lara back into this big, vast space with the constant fear of falling into the lava in the bottom. And so we sort of cut all of the side rooms off and ended up actually taking some of them and reordering the areas and putting them later in the level. But we really just wanted to let Lara sort of really traverse this big old giant shaft of nothing that leads up to the Skion room at the top.
So we had this concept, well, in the original one, of Lara meeting her ultimate nemesis, a copy of her spawned by the pyramid under Natla's orders that did exactly what she did. And I remember it was the whole concept of the monsters from Tomb Raider 1 in the pyramid was that they had no skin on them, right? So I thought it was really bizarre. I really liked this character because the doppelganger was a super skinny version of Lara, so naked that she didn't even have skin on. And I wanted to have this sort of this real kind of repulsion, but at the same time caricatured her towards the manga sort of sense of what is attractive. So really big eyes and big cute big cute manga eyes and stuff like this. So that when you got to look at her, it was the most disturbing thing that you could possibly see. You see this mirror of yourself. Ah, yeah, it's great.
You're sick.
Obviously, this is as the culmination of the story. I wanted to get the feeling that, well, Lara really has sort of reached her goal. Like, you can't ask for better than what Natla offers to her. essentially it's not just all of the knowledge that she could ever want of the past, but it's also sort of real ultimate power, right? So
and the culmination of sort of her father's quest to find
her
these
father's
artifacts.
quest, and then it leads into the mother's quest from Legend as well. So it's really major, and because we'd pushed how far she was willing to go earlier on with Larson, I wanted really for the player to wonder, even though it's basically a remake, therefore we know what she's going to make, that she fundamentally is a good person, that would be a really tough choice for her to make. When she does finally throttle back from her own obsessions and choose a good path, I think it makes it a real moment. Obviously, after you kind of understand what it is that Natla's been up to, we wanted to sort of show in the original sort of what the extremes of her sickness would create, her mental sickness. And this sort of weirdy, freaky torso boss fellow was what we came up with. I think having him sort of shuffling around after you is pretty disturbing.
I agree. He was my favorite boss in the original, and I think my favorite boss in the new one in Anniversary. He's just so gross looking, and the way he moves is all freaky and mutated. It's cool. Alright, so thank you for playing through Tomb Raider Anniversary and listening to all of the director's commentary.
Yeah.
It's been actually moderately fun.
Yeah.
And if hopefully you didn't mind listening to us yap on, and you garnered some bit of information that you were actually interested in about the history of Tomb Raider and the remake. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks.
Tomb Raider Anniversary is a new action-adventure game starring Lara Croft that's inspired by the original Tomb Raider 1 that came out in 1996.
We spent a lot of time really being careful about the choices that we made about what we wanted to include and what we wanted to change and what we wanted to keep, so that we could make a game that was both fresh and interesting to people who hadn't played it before, but also wouldn't tarnish the memory of the original game for those that had experienced it.
The things from Tomb Raider 1 that we thought really worked, that we wanted to revive, were the sense of exploration and adventure and isolation. That was extremely appealing to people. It made them feel like they were adventuring on their own. It features the same locations as Tomb Raider 1 and suggests many of the same areas and puzzles, but with a modern game sensibility.
They're all back. We've sort of gone through and given them huge polishing from what obviously existed in Tomb Raider 1. Our environments are incredible. If you compare the environments in Legend to the environments in Anniversary, you can see a huge sort of step up graphically and visually. The wolves, the bears, the bats, they're all back. Bigger, badder, scarier.
We really tried to focus the game on Lara and make it about her action and to let the player be driving Lara.
I think for fans that enjoyed the gameplay in Legend and are looking for more experience along those lines, I think it's definitely something that they're going to enjoy.
My name is Trolls Fallman. I am the composer of Tomb Raider Anniversary Edition. Being a composer in the games industry is a very delicate task because on one hand you gotta bring experience from the movie media and really integrate a lot of experience of that, but you also gotta understand how the game operates. One of the sort of nostalgic factors we wanted to play on was related to the reveal sound in the first game. You have this wonderful vibraphone kind of sound for all the reveals where you just had to get in. The original goal was to go back, listen to the original music, being faithful to the original soundtrack, but still evolve it. In Trade, we wanted only to use a symphonic orchestra and really just being very traditional in the sense, so the four main levels each have a classical setting, and they have different kind of themes and so forth, but the whole thing is classical and very traditional. You have the whole symphonic orchestra. You got strings, you got brass, you got woodwinds, you got percussion, you got choirs, which is sort of the typical setting for doing these type of scores. I think more importantly, it's not so much about the instrumentation, but what you can really expect to hear is the themes. We got all the thematic material from the original games. The choirs are back, even though I've modified them somehow. I think some of the music in Egypt had an interest to me. There's a sort of typical way you score Egyptian music, and it's not really Egyptian, it's Persian. People don't know that, but there's certain scales you use in Persia. Another thing that was really important was for the cinematics. All the cinematics are very sort of in a classical, typical orchestrated sense. In Legend I used way many different things, combined them electronica and like jazz and weird kind of stuff. But this one is super classical, all the cinematics are just completely orchestral like the game as a whole.
The soundscape for Tomb Raider Anniversary is different from Legend in that it's an evolution, and it's a lot more varied and a lot more detailed.
The goal in creating the audio environment was really to try and sell the area where you were.
Different games have different themes and different tones. For Tomb Raider, we wanted really an epic, adventurous feel. It's different from the original Tomb Raider in that the original sounds were very basic. At this point now, we can do things that the original couldn't. We have thousands more sounds than the original had. The average Laura animation probably has about as many sounds as the entire original Tomb Raider. You want those big dramatic effects and that kind of classic adventure feel. You really need to do a lot of processing and combining. Without audio, things seem dead and repetitive.
All you're doing is seeing a location, and hearing it puts you in there and makes it more believable.
People tend to think the game looks better the better the audio is. We're not pulling punches. We're trying to go for the full glory. We're trying to, give the player just this really satisfying experience.
Tomb Raider Anniversary was influenced by the original Tomb Raider, mostly in terms of some of the more logic puzzles. The original Tomb Raider had a lot of puzzles where it was sort of like pull a switch, open a door, and then you'd get through that door, and then you'd come across another door, and you'd have to find a switch or a key to open that door. And so in Anniversary, getting around that was kind of a difficult thing to maintain the original feel.
What we tried to do in Tomb Raider Anniversary was to move away from relying upon those sorts of mechanics too frequently, and to allow the player, through the use of our physics system, to get more directly involved in what they were doing. We've had to take a whole new look at how we approach the design of our puzzles, provide interactions which are much more visible, much more intuitive, that resonate more with the player and give the player more a chance to feel that they're actively imparting into the steps that solve the puzzle.
The fundamentals of a good puzzle are something that's really easy to pick up and really easy to learn how to manipulate, but difficult to master. In Tomb Raider Anniversary, we're trying to make puzzles that are easy to understand. You see all the parts laid out in front of you, and you understand what needs to be done, but it's just a challenge to sort of put all the pieces together and figure out how you're going to accomplish that.
A puzzle needs to be identifiable. You need to be able to tell that a puzzle's there and what you need to do. Mainly because if you can't identify the puzzle exists, then you've already failed.
Things I think about when I'm designing a puzzle are always the end user. I'm always trying to put myself in the position of the player and try to figure out how would they go about solving this puzzle. I hope people really enjoyed Tomb Raider Anniversary, and hopefully it will live up to people's expectations. It's been a franchise that's been around for 10 years, and hopefully it will keep going strong. So hope people enjoy it.
The whole approach was to try to respect the original.
Everything is geared around trying to recreate that feeling from Tomb Raider 1 of exploring abandoned places, ancient places, finding something secret that other people have not seen for a very, very long time.
I think if people played the original, they'll feel like this is close to the original, even though if they actually went back and looked the two side by side, they'd be very, very different.
And trying to get that special feeling is not just about one part of the art, it's about the whole look and feel. And it's about the palette and the tones and the lighting and the atmosphere and the sound and the way that the design is laid out.
So the process was we would go through and we would make things not colorful. We would light things so that they were desaturated. When you looked at it with the desaturated lights, things looked a lot more realistic. And then we would go back at the end and add color with, you know, overgrowth, flowers, and vines.
We really upped the scale a lot. That's probably been the biggest thing. Everything is more grand, more vast, just giant compared to the original.
It was the introduction of the game, and I think it does a good job of getting you in the mood. You have a sense of mystery and adventure, like you don't know what's going on, you have to explore all these things. And even within Peru, it changes so much.
So it goes from a very snow-covered landscape to a more lush, green environment, and then into a dusty temple.
Greece in particular, we went for a cool, dark, underground feeling because it's the whole fiction of that level is that it's hidden in the mountain. And then Egypt, we tried to go for the hot, glaring sun, contrasting with the coolness of ancient hidden temples.
A lot of areas start out very sort of murky and get bright as you go up. There's a lot of areas where we wanted things to be really mysterious, so towards the end of Egypt things get really sort of dark and mysterious, and then they get bright at the end.
And then Atlantis is volcano, hot, fantasy. It's completely different to the other three settings, so it's a nice way to round off the game.
The original Tomb Raider story was basically Lara Croft being hired by Jacqueline Nadler to go after the Scion of Atlantis. That story is still the same in Anniversary. We just built more emotional resonance into it. Basically in Tomb Raider 1, we just had to tell a story as quickly and efficiently as possible. So there was no real time for anything that's actually important in storytelling, things like motivation and how do they really react to each other, what effects do they have on each other, and all of these sorts of things we just didn't have time to explore. So in Anniversary it was very much going into the whys. Underneath the whole idea of the story of the original Tomb Raider was the proposition that all of the ancient civilizations are linked together, that they all have so many similarities that they must have actually been birthed from a culture that came before that we just simply don't know about yet. Lara Croft was originally designed to be just this extraordinarily steely, frightening woman who was just capable of doing anything in order to achieve her goals, basically an unstoppable force. And then I wanted that kind of madness to be sort of contained behind a facade of this extremely proper Britishness. Essentially, the story of Anniversary is about how far Lara will go for her obsessions. What makes Lara different in Anniversary from Tomb Raider 1 is that she actually has somewhat more to her. Now she's hard and she's driven because she has a purpose in life. There's been a real effort to be as careful as possible with it and as respectful as possible with the original. And still improve on it as much as possible. So hopefully people like it.
Hello, this is Michaela.
This is Peter.
And we're gonna go through everything we've unlocked during the game now that it's unlocked. So welcome to the Tomb Raider Extras. So rewards section. So we've got 2 things in special. The first is Note to the Fans. And apparently this is just something that's accessible right from the beginning of the game. Do you want to read it out?
Yeah, sure. Tomb Raiders. It's hard to believe it's been over a decade since the original Tomb Raider game was released and the world got their first taste of Lara Croft. At that time, games had just really started moving into 3D, and Tomb Raider was hailed as a landmark achievement from both a technical and gameplay standpoint. A powerful heroine, epic environments, and a world that players could really immerse themselves into were all elements that helped Tomb Raider stand out from the rest of the gaming landscape. Fast forward 10 years and things have progressed quite a bit. There have been monumental advances both in terms of what we can do with the hardware and the quality of the experience we can provide to you, the player. It was a combination of these reasons and the fact that Lara was turning 10 in game years that inspired us to create a brand new game heavily inspired by the original TR. Not just a remake, but something more. From the very first development meeting, we all agreed we wanted it to be something that would serve as both a tribute to the fans for many years of support and also give players who missed Lara's debut the first time around a chance to experience one of her earliest adventures. We wanted to recreate all the parts that people remembered and then throw in some new areas to keep veterans on their toes. We strove hard to find the right balance of nostalgia and freshness and to create an experience that captured the sense of isolation so prevalent in the original. The story was simultaneously expanded and tightened up so as to realise the full potential of the tale and provide more insight into the various characters. And while we almost duplicated TR in some regards, we took this opportunity to update some aspects of gameplay, like Lara's movement, to something a bit more contemporary. The old and the new, the familiar and the undiscovered, the mix of the past and the present that is at the very core of every Tomb Raider experience was at the core of our efforts on this game as well. A game that holds true to its predecessor, yet still stands out as a thrilling adventure all on its own. The game you have loaded right now is the culmination of those ideals. The entire team and I hope you have a great time joining Lara on her quest for the fabled scion of Atlantis, or Scion, depends how well you know it, and that you're as excited as we are about what's in store for Lara and Tomb Raider in the next 10 years. Happy gaming, and thanks to you all for a decade of loyalty and support. Jason Botter, Creative Director, Tomb Raider Anniversary.
Yeah, cool.
I only added one word.
So this is the style units, and to unlock this you need to find all 8 of the relics over the game.
Hi, my name is Andy Wood and I'm the art director on Tomb Raider Anniversary. Welcome to the style units. The style units are 4 sectors, each corresponding to a quarter of Tomb Raider Anniversary. We have a unit for Peru, one for Greece, one for Egypt, and the final one for Lost City. Each one of these areas was kind of a practice area for the art team, something that we used in pre-production where we could practice our art style, try and establish what kind of reference material and architecture we wanted to use, and to really nail down the look of the game before we moved into full production.
So I think back there was Peru. Or is this Peru as well?
I think this is all Peru. But if it's not, I'm sure it'll soon prove me wrong.
Very nice.
Thank you.
But yeah, I'm not sure I've ever seen this.
It's lovely light rays, sunbeams, whatever you want to call them. Crespectacular, whatever it is. Although that looks a bit weird through the skybox there.
You can see it's got like an end.
Oh, in fact, you can actually see the skybox loading in and out. I'm assuming this is, what, Greece or?
Yeah, this looks more like Greece. We've got the columns.
Before you go down there,
yeah,
pop out. Go left. And then left again.
Left.
It's just there was a little cubby hole there, and I'm like, ooh, what's in there? But nothing much.
Yes, there's just like the rays just kind of exist, but it's, I get that it's just a test engine.
Just to practice.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can make this.
Does that just connect to the other bit?
Yeah, how do you swim faster?
Tap triangle.
Track triangle.
No, tap triangle.
Yeah, I'm doing that now.
You said trap triangle. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming you can mount the moles.
Yeah, it's like so they've sort of wanted to make all of the sort of doable bits in the game mapped. And yes, it's like you can see how close the skybox is. It looks really weird.
Hang on, go back out. Is that the one off Doom?
Is it?
No,
you,
it can't
you would probably know more than me.
Can't be. That's silly. I bet it is. That wouldn't surprise me actually if they just went, what should we put in the background? Just put the one from Doom.
I assume if they had like a kit for the engine that they were using, they would just get all of that stuff. This is getting to Egypt, yeah.
Yeah. Whee!
This is just like, this doesn't exist in the game. They didn't even reuse it.
No. God, the sense of proportion though.
I know. We have another one.
And they've sort of used that. Well, there's something very similar at least.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Sims, I quite like the way they've avoided too much repetition in the texturing as well. I'm assuming you can go up there. Catch your breath. Wait, look up. Oh, you can't really get, yeah.
It doesn't look like you can get out.
No, I was just wondering if there was anything else in there, but obviously not. Ooh.
Oh, this is cool. This looks like Natla's mines, maybe.
Yeah, very much so. Oh, here we go. There's nothing behind it.
Okay.
Every single game.
You gotta check your waterfalls. Oh, wrong button.
I mean, didn't that song, Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls, tell you anything?
The sound cue. Oh, this is back out. Ah.
Well, it did say it was just a short style unit thing.
Just a little thing. Okay, so that was the style units thing. So next up we have these cinematics, and these are just unlocked when you view them while playing the game.
As you do them, you've already seen them in the LP you've just watched.
So we don't need to watch all of
And if you haven't watched the LP, what are you doing watching the extras for?
So Art Gallery. Origins of Lara Gallery, and you have to have found 33% of Peru's artifacts to unlock this.
Yes, it's the original concept art.
Yeah.
Which I remember, because they had it in magazines. A sort of short, because back in the day of the early PlayStation day, you didn't really show off the game screenshots.
Well, no.
For showing off the game, you would show the concept art.
Yeah. or maybe like bits of it from the trailer. Yes, it's very comic booky and very stylized. Oh, there we go, we're looping that. We have the box art gallery, and this is unlocked by getting 67% of Peru's artifacts.
Yep, that's the box art.
Starring Lara Croft.
Well, because they didn't make a big deal of it at first. But obviously it's all about the character.
I wonder if the idea was maybe they thought like there'd be other Tomb Raider characters.
I think they were just told to make a big deal about Lara Croft. I mean, I remember people describing the games as Lara Croft instead of Tomb Raider.
Although they've become Lara Croft Tomb Raider.
It is there. Lara Croft Tomb Raider Legend.
Back to the beginning. Okay.
Which looks just as good, really.
Then we have the Peru art, which you get by getting all of the Peru artifacts.
And she is standing in front of the enormous opening gates of Peru.
It's our Sherpa.
Very long-lasting character. Persists throughout at least a 5-second scene. Yes, there's you on the bridge.
Looks really cool.
I quite like it when you have the concept art and you can go, oh, and that became this section.
Yeah.
And it's not just because sometimes you have concept art and it's like, oh, this is inspiration, but we didn't really realise it. And it's like, all of these so far that we've seen are realised in full 3D.
Oh, it's that bit, right?
Yes. Well, because obviously it didn't look like that in the original, but we'll see that when we get to the later, one of the later bits.
That's one
Just
of
chilling.
The three rulers of Atlantis. Yeah. So that was Peru. Then we have the Kid Gallery, which is 33% of Egypt's artifacts.
It's the kid.
Which I think they said in the commentary was another character at one point. Oh, we only have the two pictures. Fair enough. And we have Cold.
Who was also in the kid thing, so it's a bit like what?
So this is 67% of Egypt artifacts. With his bulletproof coat there.
His bulletproof flipping everything. Apparently, one of the other names they were going to use for him was Jerk Pants McGee.
What's that? And then there's the Egypt Gallery by getting all of Egypt's artifacts.
Oh.
It's one of the mummies that turned out to be Atlantean creatures. That's neat.
It's sort of planning out. I do like the verticality that they have in the game.
Yeah.
Lots of games don't manage it very well, and this one does quite well. It's strange that this is kind of a different style of artwork, though.
It is. Oh, very pretty, though.
Seems I quite like that from the concept art and into the game, they kind of went, yeah, but it has to be old and distressed and has lost colour and doesn't look quite as... Because some of them look quite new. This one doesn't, actually. This one's quite worn in terms of the column there.
But yeah, 'cause it's like you don't really want to draw it all like the same
That was a
colour.
cool section.
I think I've looped that.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
No?
No.
Wait, go back one then? Well, that's the same.
We've just seen something like that.
No, that's the same. When you get back to the beginning, we can see. That looks cool, though.
Oh, here we are at the beginning, in fact. Then.
Oh, look.
So that one.
It's just a duplicate.
That one. Okay. So we've got
Pierre.
Pierre. This is from getting 33% of the Greece artifacts.
Or a third, as it's often known.
Yeah. There's Pierre.
I thought it was a bit boring, but he does his job.
I quite like the whole, like, he just can talk through from behind pillars and remain hidden.
Yeah, I quite like the way it pans between the channels as well.
Game gallery, this is 2/3 of Greece's artifacts. We'll unlock it. Ah, look at those old models.
Those are certainly something. You can sort of tell what they are if you squint.
Yeah, it's bat, crocodile, dinosaur, bear,
Bear.
gorilla, wolf.
That bear looks brilliant.
Another dinosaur. I'm not sure what that is at the bottom.
It looks like some sort of wolf,
And then a rat.
but then it doesn't look as good as the other one. And then you got what? Oh, those are the Atlantean sort of half-skinned creatures. You got the clone Lara on the top right. You got your is that Cold and the Kid?
It is.
And then Natla, and then one of the album art creatures from Iron Maiden. I believe that's the one from which one's the Egyptian themed one? Anyway, Power Slave, I think.
Oh, Power Slave.
Life After Death is also Egyptian themed. So
The weird boss.
yeah, the one that
And
hits
then
you
the
with its butt, and then is that the Texan there? Yeah, I suppose it is.
It would have been the original Lara with her weird knees.
Also, if you go back, I think her hands were bigger in the original than the model they have in this one, because it always felt like, anyway, they just felt like cartoonishly big in the original, if I remember. It's been a long time, though.
Yeah,
Just the wireframes as well, yeah.
That they exist. Some of the animals kind of look more complicated than the people did. But there we go, we've looped. And then the Grease gallery for getting all of the Grease artifacts. We should have some lovely paintings.
That looks brilliant.
Yeah. Well, the Grease levels are really pretty. Oh, that's the Damocles room.
That was a pain in the butt.
It really was. And that's the...
Hephaestus, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The water one.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, go back. I'm just looking at that. I like the way they have the different levels delineated.
It's cool.
And I like the way they put the Lara in for scale as well.
And we've got the Atlas one.
That's one of the rats from Parasite Eve.
Right. Actually, to be fair, in the game, like, they're not this evil looking. They were quite cutesy with cutesy music. I think that's the Colosseum.
You gotta see him.
Colosseum again. Quite cool looking.
That's one of the rooms off the Colosseum,
the underneath bit with the cages.
That's Midas.
Didn't look that overgrown in the game,
It didn't. It was quite clean, actually. And he was very much... He didn't look like that.
Oh, that puzzle. The spiky one.
Fun times.
So was this? These are like actually consistently looking aged rather than sort of bright and colourful. And that was the fire puzzle room.
Which was very loud.
It was.
Oh, and this is the room that you can sort of arbitrarily change the... Well, another room, I suppose, you can arbitrarily change the floating level of.
Yeah.
That bit was really cool, because that felt very... well, Dr. Phibe, since I've already mentioned it. Sort of this like otherworldly... Not really real, but kind of underneath the very Call of Cthulhu-y, actually.
I guess, and sort of kind of dramatic and theatrically unreal, yeah.
Including the centaurs coming to life and attacking you.
Cool. Not like where is it? He was buried, maybe.
That's the room, but beyond the two centaurs.
Yeah, there's a centaur. And another one. Oh, and that the outside of St. Francis Valley.
Yep.
There we go. We have gone all the way back round. So we have Lost Island. This is
Don't worry, we found it.
Getting 1/3 of the Lost Island artifacts.
There it is. It's not really that lost.
No.
It's it's the boat we used to get there, and it's the it is kind of weird and futuristic-y tech. It's almost Stargate-y.
Yeah, it's the hidden underground pyramid. With those two like little houses outside, which I did not know what they were there for. And yes, it looked sort of different, but sort of similar. So I think we mentioned in the LP, like it still has like writing and runes on things and egg, butt monster.
Is that just what he's called now?
Yes. There we go. The doppelganger, this was unlocked from getting 2/3 of the Lost Island artifacts. Which looks really weird and cool.
Yeah, I really liked it. That must have been quite challenging as an artist, I imagine, as well. Because you'd have to have learned a bit more about the anatomy of just under the skin? Because I know you learn a little bit about it, so you can sort of mimic.
Yeah, it's supposed to be one of the standards of if you want to push your art a bit further, is you actually learn the skeleton and then the muscles on top, because they'll sort of reflect your understanding of how someone could stand or pose. But yeah, it looks really cool. And obviously she's still quite stylized because she's kind of wearing like a bone underwear outfit.
Yeah.
And then we have Natala, which we unlocked by getting all of the Lost Island artifacts.
Now she is looking perfectly normal.
Which I kind of miss, since alternate hairstyles, I kind of miss her original voice actress.
Oh, that looks so cool.
Nallard, it's very cool actually. It kind of retained a lot more of her strange limitedness that she had, because like in the game her model actually looks kind of more normal than that. More sort of human proportioned. That's cool. And then we have Atlantean creatures, which you have to finish the game to unlock.
Although we have seen that in one of the other sections, but this one, not so much. Bat's faces are so weird. Ah. It seemed to say.
I think that's it. We have items and artifacts, which we got by getting 25% of the relics and finishing the games.
That's one of the platforms that you push around. That's obviously the Scion of Balance. Well, it's not Scion of Balance. Scion of Atlantis. Scion of Balance is a different game.
Yeah. Just a block. It's an arrow shooty thing. It's the bit in the justice room.
Hammer time.
There we go. It's not actually that much. Other characters you unlock by getting 50% of artifacts and finishing the game. Oh, these are the other Atlanteans.
Yes, the triumvirate of leaders.
It's cool. Looks cool. There we go. Not very many again. Promotional materials. We got this by getting 50% of the mansion's artifacts specifically.
Oh, I see you found me. It just looks like someone's taken Laura and ran her through FaceApp.
I can't help but think the original model kind of had a more tanned looking.
Yeah. She's always been a redhead, and she's always worn the circular glasses,
yeah.
And she's always been into motorbikes, I think, and those are sort of the thread that's always started. Although she looks a brunette in some of the games. Ah! That's quite Matrixy, actually.
I think that's the Natla building bit, so that makes sense. That's the one people saw on the manual, I think, a lot.
Oh, that looks cool. The boobs pose.
Yep, gotta get those in.
Oh, that one's good.
I think this will have been for the re-release of the game.
I can't understand why she has hair in that one, though. I mean, shouldn't she have no hair, and there should be a smaller dinosaur mouth coming out of the big dinosaur, and then it should be sniffing her, because inside her is the young of the dinosaur. What? What?
The swimsuit she never wears. That's more like it, in the wetsuit. Oh, cool.
Oh, that's kind of cool, actually. She looks very ferocious. Same as, yes, a lot of the promo materials has her with the glasses on. Okay.
Just a butt. Okay.
Some of those are quite realised. But then I suppose it's a mixture of sort of old style promotional and promotions that they did for the newer look.
Yeah.
Because that's very up to date. That one not so much, that's back to the beginning.
to contrast the two. But there we go. I think that's the whole gallery for that. Then we have the Tomb Raider 1
like these ones.
This is Tomb Raider, this is Peru. So we got this for getting all of the Peru relics. And yes, these are really cool.
Because they just have the side-by-sides. And obviously I think we'll all agree that the one on the left looks far better. No, it doesn't. It looks awful. But you can see the inspiration and you can see why the limitations of the ones on the left just aren't present in the ones on the right. Like, there's no cut-off draw distance black there. There's no, like, kind of bad textures, and you have to have a flat ceiling and floor to make up for it. It's just...
So obviously we've got snow and light and clouds and mist and all those other extra.
The thing is that Tomb Raider 1 looked really good for its time. But even then, the part of the problem with the early 3D era of the PlayStation is that before that we had these wonderful 2D animations, and then we got this, and it felt very much like a step backwards, but a lot more freedom in what you could do, especially in Tomb Raider, because the amount of control you had over your character was unprecedented, really.
But yeah, it's like, I think in the remake they went like, we need things to be taller, because you could see definitely the limitation in that everything always has quite a short roof. But it looks good. Like, you can see that the gist of the game is there.
It's like, oh yeah, there's a couple of gears, we've drawn them on. It's like, this one actually has them sort of existing. Same as the one on the left there, people didn't realise it was outside, so...
Well, you've got that massive black draw distance, yeah. It's like, I guess you could sort of go, maybe it's at night, but it's like, no, it's just the draw distance, and they made it black instead of white.
And you can see the face on the left. No, you can't, because it's not there.
Very red, the sort of bit on the left.
Yes, if there's one thing I'll say about the original, it was very colourful.
And I did want to point out, it has little paw prints on the snow, which I don't think you quite had in the new one, but there we go. That was for Peru, and then we unlocked 1 versus Anniversary Greece by getting all of Greece's relics.
Just the world of difference between those side by side there.
That's pretty cool. You can still see it's had sort of some of the... Oh god, look at those knives. They look hilarious.
Just the... Because that on the left, it's like you have to use quite a lot of imagination.
Yeah, you do.
Whereas the one on the right, obviously, it's fully realised. Monkey. That just looks completely different.
It's awful. There's the spikes. But yes, I think they were saying in the new one you never get spiked like that because they don't do it anymore. You're not allowed.
It's an interesting red line on the left of that one.
And that's what the water looked like in the original, because we hadn't seen it yet.
God, it's just the difference, though.
It's pretty stark. And then we have the Egypt gallery, which we unlocked by getting all of Egypt's relics. Yeah.
It's like, again, you can use your imagination.
Yeah, you know, it's a sphinx, there's desert, it's like, it's all there.
Well, that pool of water isn't, but...
Guys. God, those look really awful.
Same as, once again, verticality-wise. Obviously, you go above and below those statues, and you reuse that location so many times. The murals are interesting on the left.
Yeah, in a way I can't help but keep thinking, like, it was more colourful.
Oh wow, that looks a world of difference as well, simply because of the draw distance and the lighting sort of going and hitting all of the surfaces before it gets to the bottom, if indeed it does.
Yeah.
Oh, that's...
They're just kind of blobs.
Yeah.
And there we go, we're back.
I think that last one was possibly one of the most impressive differences.
Oh, the Lost Island, which we got by getting all of the Lost Island relics. grief. What is that supposed to be on the left?
Yeah. That's quite pronounced as well.
But you do have the doppelganger, Lara. There we go. That should be all the galleries, yeah. So, next up is character bios.
And these are unlocked with an increasingly large number of artifacts.
They are. So we've got Lara's, which you unlock with just 5.
Yeah, so they always open in order.
Yeah, Lara Croft is an adventurer, a world traveller, and archaeologist who seeks out tombs and relics, fueled by an obsession to uncover the secrets of the great ancient civilizations. She is a superb athlete, fluent in a dozen languages, and will stop at nothing to get what she wants.
Is the portrait really necessary when she's literally right there?
Right there. Also, I can't help but think, OC, don't steal, yo. It's like, what?
Honestly, Batman always reads very... He's got an eidetic memory, he's the greatest detective, he's got 3 cars. It's like, okay,
So,
Mary Sue.
Larson we unlock with 9 artifacts.
Larson is a former United States Marine lieutenant with 7 years special ops experience. He was given a dishonourable discharge after a violent disagreement with his commanding officer, the nature of which was never made public. He punched him. Following his release from military prison, Larson put his military experience to good use, forging an admirable reputation with private mercenary forces around the world. Recently, he has taken a contract with Natla Technologies, and that has brought him face to face with an old adversary from his past, Lara Croft.
Kid unlocked with 14 artifacts.
I believe that's pronounced the Kid.
Jerome the Kid Johnson. Jerome the Kid Johnson.
No, you said it wrong.
Jerome the Kid Johnson was a small-time gang leader in Los Angeles until his crew tried to carjack Jacqueline Natla's limousine. Natla's bodyguard, Kincaid, eliminated the entire gang but spared the kid at his employer's request. Natla needed a contact in the West Coast criminal underground, and the fast-talking kid fit the job description. The kid holds a grudge against Kincaid for the murder of his blood brothers, but is just smart enough not to act on any retaliatory impulses.
Except for that bit where he kills him.
Cold unlocked with 18 artifacts.
Kincaid is Jacqueline Natla's bodyguard. It is difficult to know what hold she has over him because he is as brutal and vicious a killer as his criminal record shows. Kincaid spent 15 years in jail after being apprehended by police in the middle of a vicious and disturbingly elaborate murder. He earned the name Cold in prison, where his sociopathic behaviour and the unexplained deaths of several cellmates resulted in the majority of his term being spent in solitary confinement. Despite all this, his 10-year in lockup only seems to have refined his innate talents, and against fervent protest from the prison psychiatrist, he was released on parole into the custody of Jacqueline Natla.
He sounds like a nut job.
Actually, I don't think he's that interesting a character, because it's like, he's a killer. Was that it? But, c'est la vie.
Pierre unlocked with 23 artifacts. Pierre Dupont. Pierre is one of Lara's archaeological rivals, and in the history of the field, there is nobody that has chased the spotlight more than him. Publicly, he has been credited with several high-profile archaeological discoveries, yet like Lara, he has been accused of tampering with the sites before informing others of his finds. And though he sells himself as the consummate archaeologist in the circles of rich collectors, he is known for what he is, a treasure hunter who is adept at finding what people want for the right price. Pierre isn't good at what he does, but in the end he raids tombs for profit, not for any real love of the mysteries of the past.
Like a jerk.
Winston unlocked with 27 artifact finds.
Winston's family has been with the Crofts for generations, and he has been the family butler since he was honourably discharged from the military in his late 20s, just as his father before him. he moved into Croft Manor to stay as the only living staff when his wife died before Laura was born. He tends to all Laura's household needs, going far beyond the duties of a traditional butler, given Laura's unusual lifestyle and pursuits, but he has never disappointed her. His loyalty to Lara, her parents and Croft Manor is beyond question.
Do you like that there's a picture of him? He's not in the game at all though. Nala unlocked with 41 artifacts. Jacqueline Natla is the owner and CEO of Natla Technologies, one of the world's largest electronics companies. She is the holder of several key computer hardware patents, and her research and development department is one of the industry's most secretive and prolific innovators. Little is known about Miss Natla's private life, other than she never gives interviews and rarely makes public appearances. Colleagues and business rivals alike say she is intimidatingly intelligent and a demanding perfectionist. Doppelganger unlocked with 36 artifacts.
A hideous creature with no skin, the Doppelganger mysteriously shares the exact physical characteristics of Lara Croft. Possessing only the most basic primal instincts, the creature mimics the actions of its adversaries. Lacking conscience, reason, and any kind of soul, the Doppelganger is at once both very dangerous and also quite vulnerable.
And then finally, Richard Croft unlocked by getting 32 artifacts.
There's a picture in the mansion.
Lord Richard Croft, Lara's father, was tutored at Eton in anthropology and archaeology. With the considerable wealth of the Croft family behind him, Richard spent his younger years mounting innumerable expeditions to historical sites worldwide in an effort to support his unconventional hypothesis of a base culture that predated known history. Richard and his wife, Lady Amelia de Mornay, had Lara only a year after marrying. 9 years later, after Amelia disappeared in a plane crash, Richard sank further and further into obsession, consumed with discovering what had become of her. A few years later, he himself died while on a dig in Cambodia.
Where people dress in black.
So the next section is outfits. So Anniversary, which is the one we get at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, it's the default outfit, isn't it?
You get a legend by completing... by collecting a relic in the mountain caves. You get the Doppelganger by finding a relic in Natla's mine. You get Camouflage by getting the relic in the Temple of Khamun. You get Golden by getting the relic in Midas's Palace,
obviously, yeah.
And you get Croft Manor Sport by getting the other relic in Midas's Palace. I think that's the one that's like the one we had to jump and jump and jump to get. You get Classic for getting the relic in the Lost Valley. You get Wetsuit for getting the relic in the Great Pyramid. You get the Catsuit for getting the relic in the Sanctuary of the Skion, or Skyon.
Depends how well you know it.
And then you get Scotch Natla for finding all of the relics. When we have all of the relics, you'll have seen how we got them through the LP. So as we have all of the music, and to unlock the game's music, you have to complete Croft Manor and finally get to the music room.
Which is where you can also play it all.
Yeah.
You can play it from here as well.
You still have to finish each chapter for it also to appear within the music room.
Yeah. So it's a combination of the two, really.
Yeah. And then the credits are just there when you finish the game and play the credits.
Yeah, you've already seen them.
Same as, I think, commentary again, you unlock those by completing each section of the game. So the first one, show enemy health. You complete all of Peru's time trials.
The same for the infinite 50 caliber pistol ammo. The all weapons and infinite SMG. No, infinite shotgun, is it? Oh right, it's done it in a strange order. Sorry, all weapons and infinite shotgun ammo. That's the Greek time trials, the Egyptian time trials, infinite health, infinite mini submachine ammo, and then the Lost Island gives you the gold and silver weapons. The sunglasses, infinite breath, and textureless mode are all from completing the game.
Yeah, that is in a bit of a strange order. But yeah, it's basically do everything in the game, you'll unlock everything.
Yeah, and then once you have, you'll basically be able to see it all like that.
Yeah, so that was Tomb Raider Anniversary's extras. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again sometime soon for Tomb Raider Legend.
Yeah, and in the meantime, other stuff.
Bye bye.